Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video I'm going to talk to you again about the federal government putting its money where its mouth is and helping with this epidemic of behavioral health issues, drugs and mental illness. This article comes from the Medical Professionals Reference. I will put a link to the article in the description for the video. But what's interesting is that Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. says the government's going to expand faith-based addiction care as drug use and homelessness rise. I love this. Every once in a while we get introduced to a faith-based program. I think these are good programs for the most part. They care about helping people. There's one actually in Miami that I know where you can go to treatment for an entire year, and it's pretty much free as long as you qualify financially. So I think this is a really great thing here. So it says here, amid mounting drug use and homelessness in U.S. cities, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that the federal government is overhauling the way it fights addiction. The strategy announced Monday includes a new focus on faith-based recovery programs and increased access to medication treatment. Fabulous. Kennedy announced plans to open federal funding to religious organizations that provide addiction care, while launching new programs aimed at helping people who are homeless and struggling with mental illness or substance use to get long-term support. That is the key here. The key, as I've said for a long, long time, is that we have to make clinically appropriate treatment available to everybody. Now, look, I run a for-profit business, okay? And every once in a while, we help the community. We sponsor local events, local charities that are helping with the situation. But this is key and critical, right? Making treatment available to everybody that's clinically appropriate and keeping people in treatment long enough. Because if you don't keep somebody in treatment long enough, whether they're going to something like Secretary Kennedy is talking about or something of a private nature, if you don't keep somebody in treatment long enough, then it's just going to be a disaster. And I've seen this all too often. By the time a family comes to us, a lot of the time their loved one has been to treatment before, multiple times. And then the question that has to be asked, that we do ask, is, well, why hasn't it worked? Well, there's two reasons the treatment doesn't work. One, it's not the right treatment that's clinically appropriate for whatever the diagnosis is. And two, they don't stay long enough. And what do I mean by that? I mean that in my world, with the work that we do, we tell families this is a year-long journey. You don't have to hire us for a year, but it takes a year for somebody to not only really experience recovery, but to develop the habits and skills necessary to maintain recovery for the rest of their life. That typically is a year-long journey. Kennedy said that he's seen many people turn their lives around in sober homes and recovery houses. Absolutely. And so a big part of the recovery program, not just in the world that Secretary Kennedy's talking about, but even in the work that we do, is the recovery residence structure, right? Sober homes. And so typically someone's going to do 90 to 180 days of a combination of residential and or partial hospitalization, where they're living at the facility that's providing the treatment services. And then they go in and live in a recovery residence, which is, a community of people like-minded who are working on their recovery day in and day out. And it gives you a structured environment and a supportive environment so that you can start to reintegrate yourself back into the community by perhaps working, okay, but at the same time working on your recovery. And that typically is going to be part of the second 6 months of the year-long journey into recovery. So good for RFK for saying this. He's spot on. And by the way, if you didn't know, Secretary Kennedy's in recovery and has been for a long time. And I actually I saw something on the television yesterday where he talked about the fact that he does a meeting every single day. Now, I'm not saying that your loved one has to go to a meeting every day. I've got friends in long-term recovery. They go to a meeting probably once or twice a week, regardless of where they are. But he goes every day, and it's just part of what he does. And he even says, I don't like brushing my teeth, but I do it anyway. He's like, I don't like going to meetings, but I also don't like the consequences of how I am when I don't go. So it's just part of it's just part of his routine. It says that this program is designed for people who are homeless and living with addiction or serious mental illness. You know, look, if this works, great. But I hope, in light of all the fraud that we're seeing in various parts of the country, anytime the government hands out money, there's always an opportunity for someone to do something nefarious, right? I'm sure these things are well intentioned, but I hope that they monitor these things, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to see all these, quote, religious organizations that aren't really religious organizations coming out of the woodwork, claiming to provide treatment services and taking advantage of people who really need the help. So if it's done right, this is going to be phenomenal. If it's done wrong, I mean, there's going to be more finger pointing at the government about how they're wasting taxpayer money. But okay, let's give it a shot and see what happens. I'll put a link to the article in the description to the video. If you have any comments or questions, or you agree or you disagree, I would really like to hear from you. I read all of your comments. If there's a specific issue that you're dealing with in your family and you'd like me to make a video, post that in the comments and I'll be happy to do so. Because if it's affecting your family, probably affecting other people's families too. And if you like this content, please give me a thumbs up. And if you want more of this content, please subscribe to the channel. I put out a video sometimes twice a day so you can get the information that you need. Anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.